Phones lit up across Atlanta the moment K. Michelle hit go live. Her voice came cool and precise. The kind that makes a room go quiet before the first sentence lands. I tried to mind my business, she said, holding a slim silver phone like a smoking gun, but tonight I'm done protecting liars. Within seconds, the comments flooded, fans are shocked, and the screen filled with eyes and siren emojis as she tapped a file labeled, Kirk. Voicemail. Dua Emma hush fell over the chat. Then a man's voice came through, low and hurried. Look, keep this off the books. She can't find out. Not now. In another corner of the city, at Frost Bistro, Rasheeda stood by the hostess stand with a to-go bag and a bright smile that looked a little forced. Her assistant whispered, "You're trending, boss." She blinked. For what? The answer arrived in the form of 100 notifications. A clip of K. Michelle's live, a frantic text from Carly read. Then Jock's voice on speaker, breathless. "Yo Sheeda, do not watch that stream without me. I'm on the way." Meanwhile, K. Michelle faced the camera, eyes steady. "People love to say I'm messy. No, I'm honest. And tonight, the truth pays its bill." She pressed play again. Kirk's voice returned, edged with panic. "I told you I'd fix it. Money's already moved. But she ever sees that contract, it's over." The chat exploded. Emotions ran high. And somewhere backstage at a rehearsal hall, Kirk stared at his phone, color gone from his face. Rasheeda finally tapped the clip herself. The words landed like ice. She leaned against the wall, breathing through the sting. "Carly," she said, voice thin, "tell me this is edited." Carly's reply crackled through the speaker. "Baby, I don't know what it is, but you need to sit down." In the distance, a staffer said, "Security, can we clear the corner?" Because people had started to gather, phones held high. K. Michelle wasn't done. "If you think this is about clout, you don't know me," she said. "This is about a woman who deserves truth in her own house." She held up a second file. Receipts. The room in her live went from loud to breathless. The family was left divided as texts flew between cousins, friends, and former allies. "This can't be real. Tell her before the blogs do. Protect Rasheeda first." And right then, as the second audio began to play, Rasheeda's knees buckled. The bag slipped from her hand, and the screen of her phone cracked against the tile. Gasps. A chair scraped. Someone shouted her name. The live rolled on. Relentless. What exactly did Kirk sign, and who else knew? Stay with me. The night had only started. The crowd at Frost Bistro thinned after midnight, but the noise in Rasheeda's phone refused to die. The clip of K. Michelle's live had spread everywhere. Blogs, gossip sites, even group chats filled with family members who usually stayed quiet during scandals. Rasheeda sat alone at a corner table, her phone buzzing non-stop, her mind trying to push away the words that refused to fade. She played the voicemail again. Kirk's voice, unmistakable, whispering about money being moved and secrets that could ruin everything. Her hands shook as she turned the volume down, but it was too late. The words had already lodged themselves inside her chest, heavier with each replay. Backstage at a small venue across town, Kirk paced in circles. His phone was hot from calls. Young Jock had already left him 5 missed calls. Carly's name kept flashing, but he couldn't answer. He pressed his hands against his forehead. "Why she gotta do this now?" he muttered. His manager, standing off to the side, whispered, "Because she's got nothing to lose, man. And if she's saying she got receipts, then you're cooked." Kirk spun around, snapping, "She don't got nothing but old drama. That's all she ever had." Still, the panic in his eyes betrayed the truth. Meanwhile, Jock stormed into Frost Bistro, his chain swinging across his chest, face tight with urgency. He spotted Rasheeda sitting still, staring at her phone as though it might burst into flames. "Sheeda," Jock said softly, sliding into the booth across from her. "You good?" Rasheeda's lips parted, but no sound came out. Tears welled in her eyes, silent and unannounced, slipping down her cheeks before she could even brush them away. Jock reached across the table, his voice rough. "Don't believe everything you hear on a live. You know how K. Michelle play." Rasheeda finally whispered, but it was his voice. "I know my husband's voice." Fans online were already dissecting every syllable. One thread on Twitter read, "If Kirk moved money, was it for Jasmine again? Or is this somebody new?" Another post screamed, "Protect Rasheeda at all costs. She don't deserve this heartbreak again." Emotions ran high as people tagged Mona Scott Young, demanding answers. Blogs wrote headlines like K. Michelle blows the roof off, LHHATL, and is Kirk Frost finally exposed? The frenzy grew with each passing hour, and producers knew the pressure would reach them soon. At that moment, Carly Red barged into the restaurant, still in her club outfit, glitter sticking to her skin. "Girl, stand up," she barked, sliding into the booth beside Rasheeda. "You don't let no man break you like this, especially not on camera." Rasheeda whispered, "It's not the camera. It's the truth. If he signed something, if he hid something, then I've been blind." Carly shook her head hard, her earrings swinging. "No, baby, you been loyal. That ain't blind, that's love. But if he played you again, the world gonna burn before we let him slide." Across town, Kirk finally answered Jock's call. "Bro, what's happening?" Jock demanded. Kirk's voice cracked. "Man, she twisted everything. That was a private conversation. Not even what it sounds like." Jock interrupted. "Then explain it. 'Cause right now Rasheeda's sitting here crumbling while K. Michelle throwing fire on every blog in America." Kirk hesitated. It's business. That contract was about the bistro. About taxes. She making it sound dirty when it ain't." Jock cursed under his breath. "So prove it. 'Cause until you do, ain't nobody buying that story. Not me, not Rasheeda, not the fans." As dawn crept toward Atlanta, the Frost house turned into a war zone of calls, messages, and family knocking at the door. Rasheeda locked herself in the bedroom, ignoring every knock except one from her son. "Kai, Mom," his small voice came through. "Why you crying? Everybody online saying stuff about Dad. It's not true, right?" Rasheeda's heart clenched as she pressed her forehead to the door. "Go back to bed, baby," she whispered, fighting to steady her voice. "Mom's just tired." But the war had already started. K. Michelle teased another drop. The first voicemail was just the appetizer. "Y'all ain't ready for the main course." Fans erupted. Hashtags trended. And in that fragile space between night and morning, Rasheeda knew her life was about to be split open once again. The stage was set. The secret was no longer just a whisper. It had become a storm, and Atlanta was bracing for the thunder still to come. Rasheeda woke up to the sound of her phone buzzing so hard it nearly slid off the nightstand. She hadn't slept more than an hour, her body exhausted but her mind locked on those voicemails. When she finally unlocked the screen, the first thing she saw was a headline from a gossip site. K. Michelle leaks explosive Kirk Frost secret, Love and hip-hop star breaks down. The article had photos of her being helped out of Frost Bistro, her face pale, Carly clinging to her arm. Paparazzi cameras had captured every second of her collapse, and now the entire internet had turned her pain into a spectacle. Downstairs, Kirk sat at the kitchen counter, scrolling through his own phone. His face looked drained, his beard unkempt. He had tried calling her room 3 times, each ignored. Finally, when he heard her footsteps on the stairs, he stood up. "Sheeda," he began, his voice tight. "Before you say anything, just let me explain." Rasheeda stopped at the bottom step, arms crossed, eyes swollen but sharp. "Then, explain. Because right now, the whole world thinks my husband is hiding money, signing contracts behind my back, and lying to my face. And you haven't given me one reason not to believe it." Kirk rubbed the back of his neck, exhaling hard. "That voicemail it ain't what it sounds like. It was business. I swear. Money was being shifted to cover bistro bills, taxes, some stuff I didn't want to stress you about." Rasheeda's laugh was bitter, the kind that burned on the way out. "Oh, so you protect me by lying to me? By sneaking around behind my back? You think that's marriage, Kirk?" Before he could answer, Carly barged in, holding her phone high. "Y'all need to see this, K. Michelle just dropped part 2. She placed the phone on the counter, hitting play. The new recording played out, Kirk's voice again, but this time louder. Clearer. "She can never know Jasmine's still tied to this. Keep her name out of it. We can't have another blow." The room froze. Rasheeda's jaw fell open, her hands trembling as she backed away. "You said Jasmine was out of our lives, out of your life. And now you're out here protecting her name again." Her voice cracked, raw and loud. Kirk reached toward her, but she snatched her arm back. "Don't touch me," she snapped, her chest heaving. Carly gasped, clutching her pearls like a scene straight out of a soap opera. "Lord, have mercy, I knew it. I knew you was still hiding Jasmine business. Kirk, you are done." At that exact moment, Jock stormed in, waving his own phone. "Brr, the whole internet clowning you right now. People saying you still financing Jasmine's lifestyle, that you got secret kids on the way. It's chaos out there." Kirk slammed his fist against the counter. "That's lies. All of it." Rasheeda's eyes narrowed. "Then why is your voice on that recording? Why do you sound guilty every single time you open your mouth?" Fans online fueled the fire. TikTok edits showed clips of K. Michelle laughing with captions, like "When you finally spill the tea, Atlanta been waiting for." Twitter threads called for Rasheeda to leave Kirk for good, trending hashtags like #FreeRasheeda and #KirkExposed. Emotions ran high, and the family was left divided, with cousins chiming in online. Some defending Kirk, others backing Rasheeda. Late that evening, cameras caught Rasheeda leaving the Frost house in dark glasses, refusing to answer questions. Speculation went wild. Is she filing for divorce? Is this the end of Frost Bistro? Will she confront Jasmine face? Inside the house, Kirk collapsed onto the couch, muttering to himself, "This ain't how it's supposed to go." Jock shook his head. "Bro, the only way you surviving this is if you come clean. All the way clean. Otherwise, K. Michelle gonna keep dropping bombs until nothing's left." And just when the world thought the drama couldn't go deeper, K. Michelle teased another clip, this one not audio, but video. She smirked into the camera, holding up her phone. "Y'all ain't ready for this one. Trust me, Atlanta, buckle up." The city held its breath. Rasheeda's world was shattering, Kirk's empire was crumbling, and the war between truth and loyalty had just begun. By morning, the city was buzzing louder than the cicadas outside Kirk and Rasheeda's gated home. Blogs had plastered screenshots of K. Michelle's smirk from her latest tease, captions screaming, "K. Michelle says she has video proof of Kirk's betrayal." Fans refreshed their feeds like they were waiting for the season finale of a reality show. Inside the Frost house, tension hung thick. Rasheeda hadn't come home that night, her car had been spotted outside Carly's condo instead. Kirk sat at the edge of his bed, his phone in his hand but too heavy to lift. Every notification felt like a hammer blow. Meanwhile, over at Carly's place, Rasheeda sat on the couch wrapped in a blanket, her eyes fixed on the TV without seeing it. Carly fussed around her, bringing tea she didn't drink and tissues she didn't touch. "Sheeda, you gotta face it," Carly said gently. "Kirk ain't been straight with you. This ain't just rumors no more. This is proof." Rasheeda's voice came out flat, hollow. "But if I walk away now, that's 25 years of my life gone. My kids, my business, my whole family split down the middle." Carly squeezed her hand. "And if you stay, what's left of you?" Back at Frost Bistro, young Jock met up with Kirk, slamming his palms on the table. "Brr, you let this spiral. You know K. Michelle don't play. She said she got video, and when that drops, it's a wrap." Kirk snapped, "It ain't what she mackin' it look like. That video, if it's what I think it is, was from a meeting years ago. Business. She cut it to make me look dirty." Jock leaned forward, eyes sharp. "Then you better pray she don't drop the uncut, 'cause the way folks already see you, they not giving you the benefit of the doubt." Later that day, the bomb finally fell. K. Michelle went live again, the view count shooting into 6 figures in minutes. She sat back in a velvet chair, sipping wine like it was a victory toast. "Everybody talking about me being messy, but I'm just giving y'all the truth y'all been begging for. They called me a liar for years. Well, take a look." She held up her phone and played a shaky video clip. The screen showed Kirk sitting at a dimly lit table with a man who looked suspiciously like a lawyer. His voice carried clear. "Make sure Jasmine's trust stays hidden. Rasheeda can't ever find out I've been funding this. If it leaks, I'm finished." Gasps filled the chat. The comments poured in. "He'd been paying Jasmine all this time. Rasheeda deserves better." Kirk exposed on camera. Carly nearly dropped her phone when she saw it. "Sheeda, baby, look." Rasheeda leaned forward, her stomach sinking as the familiar voice echoed again and again in her head. Her hands clenched the blanket tighter. He swore Jasmine was gone, out of his life. She stood up suddenly, pacing. "This man made me look like a fool in front of the world again." Within hours, the blogs ran wild. Secret trust fund for Jasmine, Kirk Frost double life exposed. Fans started speculating about how much money had been funneled, how long it had gone on, and whether Rasheeda had unknowingly been bankrolling her husband's mistress. The family was left divided, with cousins going live on Instagram defending Kirk, while others openly supported Rasheeda. At home, Kirk's phone rang nonstop, but he ignored every call except one. When his mother's number flashed across the screen, he finally answered. "Son," her voice came tired. "You better fix this. Don't you drag your wife's name through no more dirt. Enough is enough." Kirk's throat tightened. "Ma, she don't understand. It ain't what it looks like." His mother cut him off. "The problem is, it always looks like something with you. When a woman collapses in public from heartbreak, you've already gone too far." That night, Rasheeda stepped outside Carly's condo for air. The paparazzi had already found her, their cameras flashing like lightning. One shouted, "Rasheeda, are you filing for divorce? Did Kirk lie again?" She shielded her face, but her silence was louder than any answer. The footage spread in minutes. Fans online begged her to leave him. "Protect your peace, queen. Don't let him drag you down no more." And in the shadows, K. Michelle's words from her live replayed in everyone's heads. That was just one video. If they keep calling me messy, I'll show y'all the rest. Atlanta ain't ready. The war had turned nuclear, and Rasheeda's breaking point was inching closer with every secret dragged into the light. The city of Atlanta was humming like it hadn't in years. Every barbershop, every nail salon, every street corner conversation was about one thing: the Kirk Frost scandal. By now the video clip of Kirk at the table whispering about Jasmine's hidden trust fund had been viewed millions of times. It wasn't just on gossip blogs anymore, it had reached mainstream outlets, with talk shows replaying the footage and debating what it meant for Rasheeda, the marriage, and even love and hip-hop as a franchise. Emotions ran high, and the family was left divided down to its core. Rasheeda hadn't spoken directly to Kirk since the clip surfaced. Instead, she surrounded herself with Carly, Sierra, and a tight circle of women who refused to let her sit in silence. They staged an intervention of sorts at Carly's condo, wine glasses clinking on the table as the women leaned in. "Sis, you can't keep saving him," Sierra urged. "You built your empire. You raised your babies. You don't owe Kirk your soul." Rasheeda's eyes welled, but she didn't cry. "But if I walk away, what happens to the bistro? To Frost Enterprises? That's our kid's future." Carly threw her hands up. "He should have thought about that before playing games with Jasmine behind your back again." Meanwhile, Kirk was unraveling. At Frost Bistro, the staff whispered every time he entered, servers and bartenders trading theories like trading cards. He tried to drown out the noise by focusing on paperwork, but the walls felt like they were closing in. Young Jock showed up again, storming through the back entrance. "Brr, you trending #1 worldwide for the wrong reasons. This ain't just Atlanta laughing at you. It's the whole damn country." Kirk slammed a fist against the desk. She twisted the footage. "Jock, that ain't the full story." Jock leaned down, staring him dead in the eyes. "It don't matter if it's the full story. Perception is reality. And right now, the perception is you funding your side chick behind your wife's back. You think sponsors gonna stick with that? You think Mona gonna let this slide for the cameras? Wake up." Back at Carly's, Rasheeda's phone buzzed with a message from her son Kai. "Mom, people at school saying stuff about Dad. Do I need to fight somebody?" Her hands shook as she read it. The scandal had bled past her marriage and into her children's lives. She excused herself, stepping out onto the balcony, staring at the Atlanta skyline as tears finally spilled. For all her strength, all her resilience, there was still a little girl inside her that just wanted a safe, honest love. The camera flashes from the paparazzi below caught her silhouette as she leaned against the railing. And within minutes, the photo went viral with captions like, "Rasheeda alone but stronger than ever." Fans rallied around her, calling her the Queen of Atlanta, demanding she rise above the storm. But the storm was far from over. That same night, K. Michelle went live yet again. She smirked at the camera, her tone icy and deliberate. "They still callin' me messy. Cool, then tomorrow, I'll drop the paperwork. The actual receipts. Signed, sealed, notarized. Y'all gonna see where Kirk's money been going for the past 5 years?" The comment section exploded. Fire emojis, shocked faces, demands for Rasheeda to leave Kirk immediately. Bloggers clipped the statement within seconds. Headlines flashing across screens. K. Michelle promises receipts that will end Kirk Frost. Inside Carly's condo, Rasheeda clutched her phone tighter. Her friends begged her to turn it off, to disconnect for one night. But she couldn't. Every new post felt like another dagger. In the dark, she whispered to herself, if she really has receipts, then it's over. There's no coming back. And just like that, the countdown to the next drop began. The world was waiting, and Atlanta braced for another explosion. The morning sun rose over Atlanta, but it brought no peace. Instead, the city buzzed with an anticipation that felt almost electric. Everyone knew K. Michelle was about to make good on her promise. The blogs had countdown timers plastered across their homepages. Fans on Twitter were posting memes of ticking clocks, and even mainstream outlets teased their coverage of what they called the receipts drop. For Rasheeda, every second of that countdown was torture. She sat at the edge of Carly's sofa, scrolling through messages from strangers who claimed to know what was coming. Some said it was bank statements, others swore it was property records, and a few even whispered it was proof of another child tied to Kirk. Each rumor was like another weight pressing down on her chest. Meanwhile, Kirk sat alone in his car, outside Frost Bistro, chain-smoking cigarettes until his hands trembled. He hadn't done that in years. The betrayal wasn't just in what K. Michelle was doing, it was in the silence from people who once stood by him. Old friends stopped answering his calls. Business partners pulled out of deals. Even producers from Love and Hip Hop had gone quiet. His phone buzzed again. Jock's name flashing. He answered, voice ragged. What now? Jock didn't waste time. Brewer, she just posted a preview. She showed the first page of some trust agreement with Jasmine's name on it. It got your signature right at the bottom. Kirk's blood ran cold. He punched the steering wheel, shouting, she stole that. She stole it. Jock sighed. Whether she stole it or not, people believe it. You need to face Rasheeda before she sees it for herself. But it was already too late. At Carly's condo, Rasheeda's phone buzzed with a flood of messages from fans tagging her. When she opened Instagram, she froze. There it was, a blurry screenshot of a legal document with Kirk's name and Jasmine's typed in bold letters. The caption read, "This is just the beginning. Full drop tonight." Rasheeda's world tilted. She slammed the phone down on the table, her breath coming in sharp, ragged gasps. Carly rushed to her side. "Baby, calm down. Don't let this kill you." Rasheeda shook her head violently. "I gave that man my life, Carly, my youth, my loyalty, my everything. And this is how he pays me back. With secret trust funds for the same woman who almost broke us once before." The internet roared like wildfire. TikTok at it spliced old clips of Kirk denying Jasmine with the leaked paperwork screenshot. The soundtracks dramatic and mocking. Fans were livid, flooding Rasheeda's posts with thousands of supportive comments. "Leave him, Queen. We riding with you? You deserve peace, not pain." The family was left divided once more, with some relatives posting cryptic stories defending Kirk, "Don't believe the hype." People editing receipts, while others quietly liked K. Michelle's posts. By evening, the storm reached its peak. K. Michelle went live again, her face glowing with the thrill of vindication. "Y'all called me a liar for years, said I was bitter, messy, jealous. But tonight, I'm showing you the truth straight from the files." She leaned back and waved a thick stack of papers at the camera. "This ain't rumors. This ain't edited. These are notarized documents proving Kirk Frost's been moving money to protect Jasmine for years. Rasheeda deserves better, and Atlanta deserves the truth." Within minutes, the full scans hit the internet. Bank transfers, legal trust agreements, property records, all with Kirk's name tied to Jasmine's. The fans were shocked. The blogs went into overdrive, and even celebrities outside the franchise started weighing in. Twitter trended with hashtag dirty secret exposed and hashtag stand with RASHEEDA. At Carly's condo, Rasheeda collapsed back onto the couch, staring blankly at the ceiling. Her phone rang this time. It was her mother. Rasheeda answered, her voice small. "Ma." On the other end, her mother's tone was steady but heavy. "Baby girl, you can't keep carrying this man's sins. You gotta choose yourself this time." Tears spilled down Rasheeda's cheeks as she whispered, "But if I walk away, I'm walking away from my whole life." Her mother's reply was sharp. "No, you're walking toward your future." Meanwhile, Kirk pounded on Carly's condo door, shouting Rasheeda's name. Security tried to pull him back as neighbors filmed the chaos. "Let me talk to my wife," he roared. Inside, Rasheeda covered her ears as Carly whispered, "Don't open that door. He's desperate, not honest. There's a difference." And outside, the cameras kept rolling, capturing the unraveling of a marriage that had been stretched thin for far too long. The world watched in disbelief. Fans knew this wasn't just drama anymore. This was destruction. And K. Michelle, with a sly smile, promised the story wasn't finished yet. The pounding on Carly's condo door rattled the hallway until a neighbor yelled for quiet. Kirk shoved past the building security, his voice echoing, "Rasheeda, please, just open up." Inside, Rasheeda sat frozen, Carly's arm around her shoulders. Her chest tightened with each thud against the door, her mind spinning between anger and exhaustion. "He's not stopping," she whispered. Carly stood, storming toward the entryway, heels clicking against the hardwood. She cracked the door open only an inch, her glare sharp enough to cut glass. "You need to leave Kirk. Right now." Kirk's face was lined with desperation. Sweat beaded on his forehead, his hands shaking as he held up his phone. "Carly, let me talk to her. Just 5 minutes." "This ain't what it looks like." Carly rolled her eyes so hard the lashes nearly touched her brows. "You said that the last time, and the time before that. She doesn't need your excuses anymore. She needs peace." He tried to push the door wider, but Carly braced it with her heel. "Don't make me call the cops. Kirk, you already embarrassed enough." Behind her, Rasheeda's voice cracked through the tension. "Let him in." Carly spun, shocked. "Sheeda, no." But Rasheeda stood now, trembling yet firm. "If he's going to explain, I want to hear it to my face." Carly reluctantly stepped aside as Kirk rushed in, his eyes wild, his phone still clutched in one hand. He reached toward her but stopped short when he saw her flinch. Baby, please, you gotta believe me. Those papers, K. Michelle dropped. She don't have the full picture. Yeah, my name's on 'em. But that was old business. Years ago, I set up that trust so Jasmine wouldn't take me to court for child support. I thought I was protecting us. Rasheeda's voice broke into a scream. Protecting us? By hiding money from me? By lying to me in my own house? You let the whole world clown me again. She shoved him back a step, her tears mixing with fury. Do you know what it feels like to collapse in front of strangers? To have my kids dragged into this? And you standing here talking about business? Kirk's face twisted, his words tumbling out fast. I was scared, Sheeda. Every time Jasmine popped back up, it almost destroyed us. I thought if I handled it quietly, it'd go away. I didn't want to lose you. His voice cracked on the last words, but Rasheeda's expression didn't soften. You lost me the moment you chose secrecy over honesty. Carly clapped her hands. Fed up. That's it. Say it louder, Sheeda. Let him know he can't keep hiding behind excuses. Kirk glared at her, snapping. This ain't your marriage, Carly. She fired back instantly. Then stop making it the world's entertainment. The shouting rattled the walls, and soon the sound of camera shutters clicked outside. The paparazzi had gathered downstairs, recording the heated argument through the half-open door. Jock's voice suddenly boomed from the hallway as he rushed up the stairs. Everybody calm the hell down. He pushed inside, holding his hands out. This right here. This is exactly what K. Michelle wanted. Chaos. She knew this would break wide open, and she's feeding off every second. But Rasheeda wasn't hearing it anymore. She backed away, her breath shallow, her hand pressed against her chest. I can't keep doing this. Her knees buckled, and Carly and Jock grabbed her just before she hit the floor. Kirk reached to, but she slapped his hand away. The moment was caught on camera through the crack in the door, and within an hour the clip was viral. Rasheeda, collapsing again, rejecting Kirk's touch as the world watched. On social media, the fans were merciless. How many times she gotta fall before she leaves him? Kirk is poison. Protect Rasheeda. The hashtags multiplied. Hashtag collapse of trust. Hashtag leave Kirk. Hashtag stand with Rasheeda. Celebrities weighed in, dropping comments of support for Rasheeda and blasting Kirk for humiliating her yet again. Emotions ran higher than ever, and the family, once unshakable in the public eye, was fractured beyond recognition. That night, Rasheeda lay in Carly's guest room, staring at the ceiling, her phone buzzing on the nightstand. She didn't check it. She already knew what it was. More clips, more headlines, more strangers dissecting her pain. Outside the window, camera flashes flickered like lightning bugs, a reminder she had no privacy left. And somewhere across town, K. Michelle poured another glass of wine, her voice low and victorious as she whispered on live. This is just the middle of the storm. The real ending hasn't even hit yet. By the next morning, Atlanta felt like it was holding its breath. Every major blog was running with the same headline. Rasheeda rejects Kirk's plea, collapses again as scandal deepens. Talk shows debated the drama like it was breaking news. And fans on Twitter were turning the entire saga into a full-blown spectacle. The phrase dirty secret was trending worldwide. And even people outside the love and hip-hop community had started weighing in. Memes of Kirk's panicked face next to Rasheeda's collapse flooded Instagram. Some were cruel, but most were drenched in sympathy for her. At Carly's condo, Rasheeda sat at the kitchen counter with a mug of coffee that had gone cold hours earlier. Her eyes were swollen, her hair tied up in a loose bun, and her spirits seemed drained. Carly paced back and forth, ranting like a hype woman on fire. Girl, you gotta play this smart. Don't just sit here crying while he out there spinning his version of the story. You need to make a statement. Let the world know you done. Rasheeda finally looked up, her voice tired but steady. Carly, I ain't trying to make a statement to the world. I need to make one to myself. And I don't even know what that is yet. Across town, Kirk was in damage control mode. He had called an emergency meeting with Mona Scottyong and the producers. Y'all can't let K. Michelle drag this show into the dirt, he argued, his voice shaking with frustration. Mona leaned back, her arms crossed, her eyes sharp. Kirk, this ain't about K. Michelle. This about you. Your lies. Your choices. Don't put this on her. Kirk tried again. This footage she droppin' ain't the full truth. It's edited to make me look like a monster. Mona cut him off coldly. You didn't need her editing to look like a monster. You did that yourself. The silence in the room was heavy. One of the producers added quietly, sponsors are already calling. If this keeps up, we may have to cut ties. Meanwhile, K. Michelle wasn't finished. She went live again that night, her smile wicked, her words precise. Since Kirk wanna keep denying, Let's dig a little deeper. Y'all saw the trust fund papers. But what about the property? What about the condo in Buckhead that's been sitting empty in Jasmine's name while Kirk's been the one paying the mortgage? The live comments went insane. Fire emojis, broken heart emojis, fans screaming not a condo too, and Rasheeda deserves to own his house now. K. Michelle dropped a grainy photo of the deed paperwork, with Kirk's signature barely visible but enough to ignite a firestorm. The internet erupted. Bloggers speculated about how much money Kirk had funneled over the years. Fans calculated fake numbers and posted them like gospel, and YouTubers uploaded hour-long breakdowns of the timeline of Kirk's betrayals. By midnight, hashtag #BUCKHEAD, condo was trending alongside hashtag dirty secret exposed. Rasheeda couldn't escape it. Even with her phone off, Carly's TV was blasting updates every 10 minutes. Sierra and Spice came over to comfort her, each one furious on her behalf. "Sis, you gotta walk," Spice said firmly, her accent slicing through the noise. "The whole world begging you to leave this man. Don't let your legacy be tied to his lies." Rasheeda buried her face in her hands, whispering, "But walking means admitting everything they say about me is true. That I stayed too long. That I ignored the signs." Carly grabbed her chin, forcing her to look up. "No, walking means you finally putting yourself first. That's strength, not weakness." Back at Frost Bistro, Kirk sat slumped in a booth after hours, staring at an untouched drink. Jock slid in across from him, his tone softer now. "Brr, you losing everything? Your wife, your business, your reputation, and you still holding on to half. If you don't come clean like all the way clean, you ain't just losing Rasheeda, you've gone lose your kids too?" Kirk dropped his head into his hands, groaning. "If I tell the whole truth, it's worse than what they already think." Jock shook his head. "Then you better decide if protecting yourself is worth destroying everybody else." The tension reached its peak when TMZ released footage of Rasheeda leaving Carly's condo with her suitcase. The headline blared, "Rasheeda walks out, divorce imminent." Fans gasped, blogs speculated, and the city of Atlanta seemed to explode with chatter. For the first time in decades, the image of the Frost family, the empire Rasheeda and Kirk built together, was splintering in front of millions of eyes. And as the footage spread like wildfire, K. Michelle posted one chilling tweet. "Trust me, the finale hasn't even started." The fallout from K. Michelle's explosive revelations had transformed Atlanta into a living stage where every whispered secret turned into a headline, every private tear became public spectacle, and every move Rasheeda made was dissected by fans, bloggers, and even people who had never watched a single episode of Love and Hip Hop, because the drama had outgrown the show itself and become a cultural earthquake shaking the very ground beneath the Frost family. And as Rasheeda walked through the lobby of Carly's condo, dragging her suitcase behind her, camera flashes lit her path like lightning on a stormy night. Reporters shouting questions she ignored as she pressed her lips together and climbed into the waiting SUV, her face hidden behind oversized black sunglasses that could not hide the way her hands trembled when she reached for the door handle. And in that moment, the world understood that something irreversible had shifted, that the strong, resilient Rasheeda, the woman who had stood by Kirk through scandal after scandal, was finally reaching the edge of her endurance. And if she stepped beyond it, there would be no coming back. But Kirk, stubborn and desperate, refused to accept defeat. Storming back into Frost Bistro late that night with Jock trailing behind him, barking into his phone about lawyers, contracts, and betrayal, his voice breaking as he shouted, "She ain't leaving me. Not like this. Not because of that woman." But the walls of the bistro seemed to close in on him. The familiar smell of fried food and spilled liquor now poisoned by whispers from staff who no longer looked at him with respect but with pity and judgment. And Jock finally slammed his hand on the table, snapping, "Brr, you can't fight the whole damn internet. You can't fight K. Michelle. And you sure as hell can't fight Rasheeda's heart if it's done. So either you step up and come clean or you get ready to lose everything." But Kirk, red-eyed and shaking, muttered, "If I tell the truth, I lose her anyway." And those words carried heavier weight than any denial because they hinted at a secret darker than the receipts already shown. A secret still buried but threatening to surface. And across town, Rasheeda sat curled on Carly's couch with Spice and Sierra by her side, the women forming a protective wall around her while her phone buzzed non-stop with notifications. Every headline screaming betrayal louder than the last. Memes of Kirk's panic plastered next to Jasmine's smirk. TikTok splicing clips of past seasons where Rasheeda defended her marriage, now mocked with captions like "she should have left then." And even celebrities outside the LHHATL universe weighed in, with reality stars from other shows posting cryptic tweets like, Imagine funding your side chick for years and queens deserve crowns, not clowns, which only fueled the firestorm until Rasheeda whispered, barely audible, I can't breathe in this mess. I can't even hear myself think. And Carly, never one to hold her tongue, leaned close and hissed, then it's time you scream louder than him, baby. It's time you let the world know you've done protecting him. But Rasheeda's heart wavered, torn between the empire she and Kirk had built and the unbearable humiliation now consuming her. And as night fell, Michelle returned to Instagram Live like a queen addressing her kingdom, holding up the paperwork with nails painted blood red, her smile sharp as she declared, they said I was lying, they said I was messy, but who messy now? Who messy when the papers don't lie? And she waved the documents in front of the camera, each page stamped and notarized, each signature undeniable, and the comments exploded with fiery broken heart emojis, fans demanding Rasheeda leave, others thirsting for more tea. And when a follower asked, in all caps, what else you got? Michelle leaned forward, her voice low and lethal. Oh baby, I got videos, I got texts, I got everything. And if Kirk keep frontin' like I'm macking this up, then tomorrow, y'all gone, see Jasmine herself backing me up. Because trust me, she ain't done with this story either. And just like that the internet broke again. Theories spiraling like smoke in every direction. Some insisting Jasmine was about to re-enter the picture with claims of more money, more lies, maybe even another child, while others swore it was all a calculated takedown designed by Michelle to destroy Kirk's reputation once and for all. But no matter the speculation, the outcome was the same. Rasheeda trapped at the center of a storm she didn't create but couldn't escape, her face the symbol of betrayal and heartbreak trending across platforms, her silence louder than any statement. And inside the Frost home, Kirk's children watched the news scroll across TV screens. Kai texting his mother late into the night asking if their family would survive, if the rumors were true, if the laughter from kids at school would ever stop. And Rasheeda pressed the phone to her chest after reading his words, tears soaking her shirt, because no mother should have to watch her children bear the weight of their father's sins. Yet here she was, crumbling under the weight of choices she never made, while Kirk sat in his office drowning in regret, surrounded by unpaid bills, unanswered calls, and the gnawing fear that when the sun rose again he would no longer be a husband, no longer a respected businessman, no longer even a man in the eyes of those who once admired him, but instead a symbol of weakness, deceit, and failure. And when Jock returned to check on him in the early hours, he found Kirk slumped in his chair, muttering to himself, I lost her, I lost everything. Though whether he meant Rasheeda, his family, or his reputation, even he didn't seem sure. But Atlanta was sure of one thing. This scandal was far from over, and the next chapter promised to be even uglier than the last. Because as Michelle teased her next drop and Jasmine stirred in the shadows, preparing to re-emerge, the city braced for a confrontation that would tear open wounds never fully healed. A confrontation that would leave no one untouched. And at the center of it all, Rasheeda, still trembling, still torn, still deciding whether to finally cut the cord that bound her to a man who seemed determined to burn every bridge behind him. And in that heavy silence the world leaned in, waiting for her next move, because her choice would decide not only the fate of her marriage but the fate of a franchise built on love, lies, and the kind of heartbreak that never stays hidden for long. As the second sunrise of the scandal bled into Atlanta's glass towers and brick neighborhoods, the air carried a strange hush, the quiet before a verdict. And in that hush, the Frost story swelled until it felt larger than the city itself. Because what began as a live stream had swollen into a trial by internet where every voice claimed the gavel. And when Rasheeda stepped out from Carly's building with a hood pulled tight over braided hair, the crowd didn't cheer or boo, they just watched, 100 phones held up like lanterns, trying to capture the exact moment a woman chose herself over a history that no longer loved her back. And she slid into the SUV without looking left or right, clutching a folder to her chest. The same folder she had begged her lawyer to draft overnight. Pages of separation terms, asset lists, joint accounts, all the numbers that built an empire and now threatened to tear it in half. While upstairs, Carly stared out the window and whispered, "Go be free," because even the loudest friend knows when the noise must stop. And across town, Kirk stood at the bistro's walk-in fridge pretending to check inventory while his reflection in the quid steel door showed a man he barely recognized. Shoulders bent, eyes bloodshot, phone buzzing in his pocket like a trapped bee because Mona was calling again. And this time, he answered, and her voice was calm but blunt. "We cannot protect you from truth, Kirk. If there is more truth than you've told, say it now." And he hesitated so long that the silence became an answer. And Mona exhaled. Then we're shutting you down for the next phase of production. Until this is resolved. Which hit him harder than a punch. Because the show had always been his last lifeline. The stage where he could spin, apologize, rebuild for one more season. But now even that rug was being yanked. And he slumped against the freezer door, murmuring, I can fix it. To no one. Because there was nothing left to fix with tape and charm when the roof beams were rotted through. And in a studio across town, K. Michelle sat before a ring light with a folder thicker than the one clutched to Rasheeda's chest. Her voice level as she told her audience, I promised y'all the finale, but before we get to fireworks, let me say this, I never wanted to hurt another woman. I wanted the lies to stop. And for a fleeting second the comments slowed, as if the crowd recognized a sliver of sincerity under the diamond-hard edges. But then she lifted the first set of receipts, property tax stubs, escrow ledgers, the bland paperwork that becomes a weapon when read aloud, and she recited numbers that sounded like betrayal set to meter, and by noon, those numbers sat in every feed like stones in the gut, and Rasheeda's attorney walked her through scenarios: temporary support requests, protective orders for the children's privacy, asset freezes while she sat stiff in the leather chair, nodding, her mind flicking between a private ache and a public duty, because fans were shocked and fans were loud, but the children needed quiet, and she decided, with a clarity that arrived like cold water, that she would not make her next move on camera. She would file quietly, then speak once, and only once, when the ink dried. But quiet was a luxury she barely possessed, because within the hour TMZ posted footage of Kirk outside the bistro arguing with a courier over a thick envelope, and the headline Kirk served lit the internet like a fuse, even though inside the envelope was just a demand letter from a sponsor threatening to pull signage unless he addressed the scandal on camera. And that irony hollowed him further, the way a man becomes a hallway echo of himself, and he finally called Jock to the back office and said the words he had choked on for 2 days. It wasn't just the trust, and when Jock didn't interrupt, he went on, voice low and broken, there was a consulting agreement in Jasmine's name, not for her, for someone tied to her. I ran it through a shell to keep it away from family accounts. It wasn't romantic, it was messy. It looks criminal even though it's not illegal, and I never told Sheeda because I knew how she'd hear it, and the admission dropped into the room like a dumbbell onto glass. And Jock rubbed his face and said what any real friend says when the point of no return is behind you. Then you gotta tell the world before Kay does, because the only thing uglier than the truth is the truth told by someone who wants to bury you. And Kirk nodded once, as if a decision could hold a body together when the backbone was already cracking. And he dialed a producer he still trusted and arranged a sit-down that afternoon. No glitz, no soundtrack, just a man in a chair. But as he left the bistro, the scene outside made him falter. Fans split down the sidewalk like competing juries, one side jeering, one side praying out loud for his family. And he walked through them stone-faced because there are parts of a fall you must do alone. And at the same hour Rasheeda parked in an office lot near downtown and watched from the car as her attorney carried filings through the revolving door, and her stomach flipped, and a memory flashed so vivid it stole her breath. The first time she and Kirk signed paperwork together, not a trust or a deed, but a newborn's hospital forms, their hands side by side under the fluorescent light, the future spread before them like a clean road. And she wiped her face hard and whispered, I choose me, because the past is a museum, and museums close at night. And she stepped out into the noon glare and followed her attorney inside, while upstairs a clerk stamped a date onto paper that would live in county records longer than hashtags live in hearts. And that stamp echoed across 1,000 phones as if people could hear it, because within minutes a court filing number leaked, not the documents, just the number, enough to confirm that something irreversible was indeed underway. And the sympathy that washed over the timeline wasn't soft but fierce. Like a crowd forming a shield around a woman they didn't know but felt they did, and the family was left divided deeper than before. Cousins posting verses, a sister-in-law deleting photos, one aunt going live to insist marriage is work, and a cousin commenting so is self-respect. And in that fracture you could see the truth of famous families. Television makes you bigger, not stronger. It magnifies everything, including the cracks. And by late afternoon, K. Michelle announced a final drop at dusk, the last file, she called it. And while fans set alarms and chefs in bars positioned TVs for watch parties like it was a title fight, Kirk sat center frame on a simple stool beneath soft lights, hands clasped, no jewelry, a white tee under a denim jacket, the stylist's attempted humility, and he tried to speak without varnish. Voice rough, I lied. He began, not about love today but about money yesterday. And I lied because I was afraid of what truth would cost inside my house, and I told myself I was protecting my wife. But really, I was protecting my pride, and he laid out the consulting payments. The shell company. The way shame disguised itself as strategy. And though his words lacked spin, they also lacked names. He avoided Jasmine's details. He avoided the condo, the trust. He threaded the needle too carefully, and the internet heard the dodge even if he didn't. And the chat filled with comments that read like a chorus. Half-truth, no dates, say her name. And the clip spread fast enough that by the time the camera cut, the consensus was sealed. Apology without confession. And minutes later, as if she had rehearsed with the wind, K. Michelle went live into a million waiting screens from a quiet room where the only noise was the paper she shuffled. And she did not scream or gloat. She simply said, I asked him to tell it all. He told y'all half, so here's the rest. And she released emails. Not salacious, just damning. Spreadsheets and signatures. Beneficiaries and wire confirmations. And when she spoke Jasmine's name, the feed cracked like ice. And in a small office 3 floors above the clerk's desk, Rasheeda watched with her lawyer and did not cry, because some wells run dry from too much drawing. And instead, she asked clear questions about next steps, brand protections, custody schedules that guard the children from cameras, a press statement that centers dignity instead of rage, and the lawyer nodded. Impressed by the discipline of a woman the internet kept calling broken. And as the sun dropped low, casting long shadows down Peachtree, a new call came through to Rasheeda's phone. An unknown number she almost ignored until instinct made her answer. And a voice, she recognized but hadn't heard in months, said softly, It's Jasmine, and the room fell out from under her, because there are names that swing doors wide, even when the hinges are rusted. And after a tiny pause, Jasmine continued, I don't want to fight with you, I never did. Whatever you believe about me is probably true and not true at the same time. But my life got used like a weapon between 2 people who once loved each other. And I have a piece you need to see. Something Kay doesn't have. And the lawyer leaned forward, mouthing record, while Rasheeda sat perfectly still and said, What piece? And Jasmine replied, A letter from the person behind the shell he used. You don't know their name, and you should, because Kirk wasn't just protecting me. He was protecting a partner who stood to profit off your family's brand. And the contract names that person. And a cold clarity slid into the room. Because in the storm of cheating and trust funds, everyone had missed the possibility of a different betrayal. One that wasn't between beds, but between banks. And Rasheeda said, Send it. And an email arrived seconds later. A scanned letterhead with a signature that made her knuckles whiten on the phone. A distant relative. A cousin who had smiled at holidays. A partner in quiet shadows. And the lawyer nodded grimly. This changes the leverage calculus, because betrayal that crosses bloodlines exposes a bigger rot. And while the city readied for K. Michelle's finale, Rasheeda pivoted away from the screen and toward the courtroom, the place where reality TV can no longer direct the scene. And she told her lawyer to draw up a new set of demands. Not just separation, but forensic accounting, clawback, injunctions on anyone profiting off Frost trademarks through shell structures. And the lawyer got to work while outside a crowd roared at something they could not see. Because in the theater of public scandal, the quiet moves matter most. And across town, Kirk watched K. Michelle's final drop on a laptop in a dark office, expression stony. And then Jock burst in with his own phone raised. You see this? There's more your cousin's name. And Kirk's shoulders sagged as the floor completed its collapse. Because if family was in the thread, then loyalty had no anchor. And he whispered the cousin's name once like a prayer and once like a curse. And with that he finally called Rasheeda not to plead but to surrender. You'll have everything. You hear me? I won't fight you on the business. On the house. I won't fight you on the kids. Just don't let them think I didn't love you. And she listened, then answered with a strength he had always admired and too often abused. Love that hides in lies, starves, and I won't starve anymore. And she hung up gently, like setting down a glass that has already cracked. And the camera outside Carly's building caught nothing that evening because Rasheeda didn't go back there. She drove to a small hotel by the river where no one thought to look. And she ordered room service and called her children. And her voice was steady when she told them that grown-ups sometimes have to make hard choices to keep a family healthy. And they cried, and she cried after hanging up, but there was a different taste in those tears, salt cut with steel, because a plan is a kind of oxygen, and she had one now. And later, when the broadcaster on the hotel TV announced that the network would air a special edit of Kirk's stool confession followed by K. Michelle's receipts montage for ratings, for closure, For spectacle, Rasheeda muted the sound and looked out at the black water moving under the bridge, understanding that a storm is not a story until you walk out of it, and the path out begins with one step and then another. And the internet kept shouting, and the family remained divided, and emotions ran high in comment sections and living rooms and studios. But in a quiet room above a restless river, a woman picked up a pen and signed her name to a future that would not ask her to collapse to be seen. And at last the night exhaled. The night exhaled, but the noise did not, because Atlanta was still on fire with speculation and sorrow and rage and glee all tangled into one roar that carried through barbershops, beauty salons, Uber rides, grocery store lines, and late-night studios, where DJs replayed snippets of Kirk's half-confession against clips of K. Michelle's thunderous reveals, and fans called in crying for Rasheeda or clowning Kirk. Emotions so high the radio hosts barely needed to speak. And meanwhile, in her quiet hotel room, Rasheeda finally slept a few hours. Though dreams kept jolting her awake, dreams of cameras chasing her down aisles, dreams of her children asking her why their father whispered lies. And when the sun finally poured through the curtains, she stood at the window, her eyes swollen but her jaw set, and whispered to herself, "Today I move, not just feel," then pulled on a crisp blazer and met her lawyer downstairs, because the new filings had to be made quickly before any more assets vanished into shadows. And across town, Kirk sat in a daze at his cousin's apartment, the cousin whose name now stained the documents Jasmine had sent, and the cousin was begging, sweating, denying, swearing the signature was forged, even as Kirk knew his own gut didn't believe it, because betrayal wears a smell you can't mistake. And his phone kept buzzing with producers and bloggers, but he ignored them, staring instead at the cousin who had once shared Christmas dinners and who now stared at the floor, unable to meet his eyes. And Kirk muttered, "You destroyed me from inside," and walked out without another word. Because what words exist when family buries knives in blood? And as the day unfolded, the blogs pumped out fresh headlines. Cousin named in frost scandal and family betrayal adds twist, while fans online dissected every letter of the scanned documents, uploading TikToks with conspiracy boards and red strings like amateur detectives, each one feeding the frenzy until hashtags splintered into dozens. Hashtag dirty secret exposed, hashtag frostfiles, hashtag family traitor, and the family was left more divided than ever. Some cousins blasting Jasmine, some blasting K. Michelle, some even blasting Rasheeda for taking it public even though she herself had said nothing yet. But her silence was not weakness now. Her silence was strategy. Because she was moving through the courthouse like a shadow, signatures stacking, injunctions filed, and her lawyer whispered, "You're weeks ahead of their game now," and she nodded, clutching the pen like a sword, while outside cameras still swarmed the streets but had no idea she was already pulling away from the battlefield. And K. Michelle, sensing the end of her own arc, posted one last message, "My tea is poured, what they sip now is their choice," and turned her phone off, letting the chaos burn without her. And Jock, watching it all unravel, finally found Rasheeda through Carly and asked to meet. And when they sat across from each other in a small diner, he leaned forward, voice soft, "I can't defend him anymore, sis, but I need you to know, not all of us around him were scheming. Some of us were just dumb enough to let him sink." And she studied him with tired eyes and nodded once. "I know, Jock, but the truth is, it don't matter anymore, because I'm not carrying him no more." And he respected the steel in her voice, because this was not the Rasheeda who had stood by Kirk for years. This was the Rasheeda rising from the wreckage. And by nightfall, when TMZ confirmed filings had officially been logged, the internet went berserk again, but this time the tone shifted. From pity to pride, from heartbreak to hallelujah, with fans chanting digitally, "Finally free, finally strong, finally choosing herself." And Atlanta, city of scandals and comebacks, held its breath to see what empire she would build next. While Kirk sat alone in the bistro's empty dining room, the lights off, the hum of the fridge the only sound, scrolling through old photos of him and Rasheeda laughing before the world tore open, and he whispered to the dark, "I loved you wrong, but I loved you real," though whether she would ever hear or care no longer mattered, because her future had already stepped past him. And the show that once thrived on drama had found its darkest storyline yet, one that even the producers could not script, because this was realer than reality TV. This was a collapse and a resurrection played out before millions. And though the family was left divided and emotions ran high and fans were shocked beyond measure, in the end, the image that would remain was of Rasheeda walking forward, suitcase in hand, sunglasses on, the weight of betrayal behind her and the long road of freedom ahead. and the world understood that sometimes the greatest show is not the chaos but the silence after. When a woman finally decides to rise, and rise she did, though the storm around her refused to quiet, because once the machinery of gossip turns its wheels, it chews until nothing is left. And the Frost scandal had become a carnival of headlines and hashtags, talk show debates and late-night monologues, YouTubers posting hour-long breakdowns and TikTok teens reenacting the collapse scene outside Carly's condo with captions like Oscar-worthy heartbreak, while real heartbreak bled quietly in Rasheeda's chest. Yet, even through the noise, her steps grew steadier, each filing signed, each call with her lawyer reinforcing that she was no longer trapped in the cycle of apologies and second chances. And when she met with her children, in private, away from cameras, she told them plainly, "I will not let the world laugh at us anymore. I will protect you even if it means walking away from everything else." And their nods, their small hands clutching hers, gave her the strength to breathe again. While Kirk, on the other side of the city, sat in an empty Frost bistro surrounded by unpaid invoices and flashing headlines on his phone, knowing the empire he once controlled was crumbling brick by brick. And Jock stopped by late, leaning on the bar, sighing, "Bruh, you can't hide here forever. The show's moving on without you. The streets already did." And Kirk muttered, "It wasn't supposed to end like this. Not after all we built." But Jock shook his head. "You built lies on top of love, and lies don't hold." And the truth of that sank in heavier than the whiskey in Kirk's glass. While across town, Carly, Sierra, and Spice gathered around Rasheeda like armor, strategizing not just legal moves but public ones, advising her on how to break her silence. And finally she agreed to one sit-down, not with a producer or a gossip blogger but with a national outlet, a chance to speak her truth once and close the chapter. And when the interview aired the next week, she didn't cry or yell. She spoke slowly, deliberately. "I gave 25 years to a marriage. I gave loyalty. I gave love. And what I got back was secrets and shame. So I chose me. I chose my kids. I chose peace." And that clip spread like gospel. Fans flooding her comments with crowns and fire. Celebrities reposting her words. Hashtags flipping from pity to power. Hashtag Rasheeda's trending worldwide. And though the family remained divided, with some relatives accusing her of airing dirty laundry, the tide of public opinion had turned decisively. And Kirk watched the interview alone in a hotel room, tears he hadn't allowed anyone to see slipping down his cheeks, whispering to the TV, "I did love you. I swear I did." But his voice was drowned out by the roar of a world that had already chosen its heroine. And when Love and Hip Hop producers announced the next season would continue without him, focusing instead on Rasheeda's new journey, the message was clear. The show belonged to the survivor, not the scandal. And the last images burned into Atlanta's memory were not of a woman collapsing in heartbreak but of a woman walking tall, head high, hand in hand with her children, leaving behind the bistro, the broken vows, and the man who loved her wrong, while the world, still buzzing, still dissecting, finally quieted enough to see her not as a victim but as a victor. And that transformation, raw and undeniable, became the true ending of a saga that had started as a secret and ended as a rebirth, a reminder that even in the dirtiest drama, sometimes the loudest sound is the silence of a woman who refuses to fall again. The storm refused to fade even as days bled into nights, because Atlanta was still gripped by the scandal that had turned the Frost family into a headline factory. And even though Rasheeda had finally spoken, finally chosen herself, the internet wasn't finished dissecting every thread, every document, every clip, and every whispered rumor that followed her and Kirk like shadows stitched to their backs. And while she poured herself into rebuilding quietly, sketching plans for new business ventures, shielding her kids from the cameras, the world insisted on watching her every move. Reporters lurking outside boutiques she visited, bloggers tracking her car to the courthouse, fans cheering her at gas stations, strangers hugging her in grocery aisles whispering, "We're with you, Queen," as if their solidarity could patch the holes betrayal had drilled through her heart. And across town, Kirk spiraled deeper into isolation. The once confident mogul, now pacing empty hallways, ignoring phone calls from producers and relatives alike, his voice cracking when he left late-night voicemails for his kids, saying, "Daddy still loves you. Don't let them change that," though he knew love wasn't enough when lies had drowned trust. And the bistro itself had become a hollow stage, servers quitting, reservations drying up, the once bustling space now filled with more gossip than customers, each table that sat empty a reminder of how quickly empires crumble when the foundation is cracked. And when Jock stopped by with takeout one evening, he found Kirk slouched at a booth, staring at a stack of unpaid bills. His eyes glazed like glass, muttering, "She gone, man. She really gone this time," and Jock, who had seen 1,000 dramas rise and fall in Atlanta, didn't bother. He just said, "She ain't gone, Brewer, she risen." And that's the difference, because the city had chosen its heroine, and the spotlight that once shone on the Frost marriage had split cleanly, bathing Rasheeda in sympathy and strength while leaving Kirk in shadows. And though he tried to fight back, arranging a clumsy press conference at the bistro, the questions from reporters swallowed him whole, voices firing accusations like bullets. Did you funnel money to Jasmine? Did you create shell companies under your cousin's name? Why won't you address the Buckhead condo directly? Until he cracked under the barrage, storming out slamming the mic stand to the floor, and the clip spread instantly, his red-faced retreat replayed on loop with mocking captions, fans howling that the man who once strutted through cameras was now running from them, while Rasheeda.com in her silence only grew stronger in public imagination, because nothing inspires like a woman refusing to collapse twice. And soon offers poured in not just from producers, but from brands, sponsors, women's organizations who wanted her as a face of resilience, and she took meetings carefully, choosing which platforms allowed her to control the narrative. And when she appeared on a national morning show wearing a crisp white suit, she didn't rant or weep. She said with quiet clarity, "The hardest part of betrayal isn't what they did, it's realizing you let yourself believe their lies. But once you forgive yourself, you can walk free." And those words echoed like scripture across time, stitched into TikTok edits, printed onto t-shirts by hustlers on corners, shouted in gyms and church halls alike. And Kirk watched that clip in his dim kitchen, his hands shaking around a coffee cup, whispering, "That's the woman I married, and that's the woman I lost." But regret was no cure for ruin. And even Jasmine, the ghost that had haunted their marriage for years, emerged onto the stage again, but not with malice this time, with a trembling Instagram post of her own, a long caption under a photo of her child, saying, "I never wanted to be used as a weapon. I never wanted to be the reason a family broke. I made mistakes too, but the lies were bigger than me. And maybe one day we'll all heal." And though fans flooded her comments with mixed emotions, some supportive, many vicious, her words added another layer to the saga, because suddenly the villain the internet had painted seemed less like a mastermind and more like another pawn in Kirk's chess game. And the sympathy that had once been scarce for her flickered faintly, though it was too little too late to change the tide, because Rasheeda had already seized the crown, her image now rebranded from loyal wife to unshakable queen. And at Frost Bistro, with chairs stacked and bills unpaid, Kirk finally locked the doors one final time, whispering to the dark kitchen, "We had a run. We had a name. Now it's ashes." And he walked out without turning the lights back on, leaving behind the echo of laughter and arguments and anniversaries celebrated under neon signs, while the city kept buzzing, because Atlanta loves a spectacle but worships a survivor. And in every barber chair, in every nail salon, in every Uber ride, they repeated the same words. Rasheeda walked away and walked taller, and in that chant, Kirk's silence grew heavier, until even he understood that the story no longer belonged to him, it belonged to her. And the cameras, once chasing him, now swiveled entirely toward Rasheeda, waiting breathlessly for the next chapter of her rebirth. And the next chapter of her rebirth unfolded like a slow, deliberate march rather than a sprint, because Rasheeda knew the cost of moving too quickly when the ground beneath her was still shifting. So she built carefully, step by step, sealing her legal filings, reorganizing her businesses, surrounding herself with a tighter circle than ever before. Women who had walked through their own fires and emerged hardened and wiser. Women like Carly and Spice who sat at her kitchen table with notebooks and phones, helping map out tours, product lines, appearances, all framed around Rasheeda's new image as the survivor who didn't just endure the storm but turned it into power. And when she stepped onto a stage at a women's empowerment conference weeks later, the applause thundered so loud she paused, blinking against the sound, then steadied herself and delivered words not scripted by producers but pulled from her scars, saying, "They laughed when I stayed, they cried when I fell, but they cheered when I rose. And I stand here to say you don't need permission to choose yourself. You just need courage." And the crowd erupted again, tears shining in eyes, cameras flashing, clips spreading online like wildfire, each one solidifying her place, not just as a reality star but as a symbol of resilience. While Kirk, now living in a rented apartment far from the cameras, scrolled through those clips late at night, his phone casting blue light on his hollowed face, and he replayed them over and over, whispering, "She's shining brighter without me," and though regret coiled around him like smoke, He couldn't extinguish it, because every apology came too late. Every truth bled out after the damage was done. And the producers of Love and Hip Hop, always hungry for spectacle, debated behind closed doors whether to keep him in any capacity, but the decision was clear when ratings spiked after his absence. Fans tuning in not for him but for Rasheeda's journey, her glops, her strength, her alliances. And so Kirk was quietly erased from the narrative, a ghost in the background of a story that once revolved around his missteps. And Jasmine, still tangled in whispers, slipped back into silence after her post, retreating from the spotlight that had scorched her, while Michelle, satisfied she had detonated the bomb she promised, pivoted to her music and her own leaving behind the rubble she'd exposed. And in that rubble, Rasheeda planted seeds, launching a new boutique line that sold out in days, dropping a skincare brand that had women posting selfies tagged #RASHEEDA glow, proving that out of betrayal can rise empire. And the internet, once mocking, now crowned her with hashtags of triumph. Memes that once replayed her collapse now edited into her walk on stage, her head high, her heels sharp, her voice steady. And the family that had been divided began to quiet, some relatives apologizing, others fading into the background. And though the wounds still burned, Rasheeda no longer carried their noise, because she had built walls strong enough to keep the chatter outside. And when she looked at her children sleeping safe, she whispered to herself, "We're free." And for the first time in years, she believed it, while Kirk, left in the dim corners of Atlanta nightlife, became a cautionary tale told in hushed tones. A man who mistook secrets for strength and lost everything to receipts and betrayal. And though he tried once more to reach Rasheeda, sending flowers, letters, voicemails, she never responded, because her silence was the loudest answer. And the cameras, the blogs, the fans, they all understood the saga had closed its chapter, not with reconciliation, not with forgiveness for the man who squandered it, but with a woman stepping into her power so completely that the past no longer chained her. And Atlanta, always hungry for drama, found itself strangely satisfied, because the Frost scandal had delivered every collapse, revelations, betrayals, receipts, family divisions, explosive live streams, paparazzi chaos, and yet its final gift was not Kirk's downfall but Rasheeda's rise. A rise so undeniable that even her harshest critics admitted she had transformed pain into legacy. And so the story lingered in whispers and reruns, in podcasts and blogs, but its ending was clear, a single image carved into collective memory. Rasheeda, no longer collapsing, no longer weeping, walking forward beneath a sky still buzzing with gossip, her stride unbroken, her crown untouchable, her name no longer tied to scandal but to survival. And as the credits of that season of life rolled across Atlanta's neon nights, the world understood the lesson, etched in fire and tears, that when secrets burn and empires fall, sometimes the truest drama is not who betrayed whom but who decided never to be betrayed again. The scandal may have reached its peak, but the aftershocks rippled through Atlanta like tremors that refused to end, because betrayal on that scale doesn't simply vanish when the cameras turn off. It lingers in conversations, whispered over brunch mimosas, in barbershop debates that grow heated, in social media posts where fans continue to dissect every angle long after the story has supposedly concluded. And Rasheeda, though she walked taller and claimed her power, still felt those tremors in quiet moments, when she scrolled past a meme mocking Kirk and remembered the years she had defended him, or when she overheard fans cheering her strength and wondered why it had taken her so long to claim it. Yet every doubt was countered by evidence of her growth. The steady hum of new business ventures thriving, the applause of women who looked to her as proof that endurance could lead to emancipation. And each morning when she opened her boutique doors and saw lines of women waiting not just to shop but to glimpse the woman who had become their symbol, she felt the ache in her chest soften just a little. And across town Kirk drifted through shadows, a man without stage or spotlight, retreating into back rooms of half-empty clubs where whispers followed him like smoke, where younger men eyed him with a mix of pity and caution, seeing in him not a mentor but a warning. And Jock, loyal yet blunt, continued to check in on him, sitting across tables littered with unpaid bills and empty bottles, saying things like, "Brr, you can rebuild, but not if you keep lying to yourself." Yet Kirk only shook his head, staring at his phone, replaying clips of Rasheeda's interviews, her speeches, her glow, muttering, "She don't need me no more," as though the realization cut deeper than any gossip ever could. And Jasmine, who once threatened to reappear as the central villain of this saga, withdrew almost entirely, her name still tossed around by bloggers but her face hidden from the spotlight, because even she knew that any attempt to speak now would only reignite flames that no longer benefited her. And K, Michelle, having detonated her bombs and proven her points, shifted back into music, occasionally throwing a sly tweet when Kirk's name trended but otherwise letting the receipts she dropped speak louder than any melody. And through it all, Rasheeda became the enduring flame, her silence punctuated by carefully chosen words, her movements precise, her image controlled, until she wasn't just a survivor of scandal but a master of narrative. And soon, documentaries began circling, producers pitching a tell-all special, networks offering six-figure deals to chronicle her rise. Yet she hesitated, wary of letting another machine profit off her scars, until she realized that if the story would be told, it was better told in her voice, and so she agreed, sitting beneath studio lights once more, but this time not as a cast member in an ensemble of chaos, but as the central narrator of her own truth. And when the special aired, her voice steady as she walked viewers through the betrayal, the collapse, the decision to leave, the rebuilding, the final message was not about Kirk or Jasmine or even K. Michelle. It was about her children, her businesses, her future. And the country embraced it, critics praising her candor, fans weeping in living rooms, ratings soaring higher than any scripted reunion show. And the family, still fractured, began to soften, cousins reaching out with apologies, aunts sending prayers, siblings texting that they finally understood her choice, though not all were sincere. And she knew which voices to welcome and which to ignore, because the biggest lesson Betrayal had taught her was how to separate loyalty from convenience. And Kirk, watching that documentary alone on a flickering television, wept openly, his hands covering his face, because the finality was undeniable. The world had accepted Rasheeda's rise as the ending, leaving him a footnote, a cautionary tale, a man whose secrets birthed receipts that swallowed his empire whole. And as Atlanta continued its buzzing, the saga cemented itself into legend, a story retold in podcasts and gossip blogs, in songs and memes, in whispered cautionary tales at kitchen tables, until it no longer belonged to the people who lived it but to the city itself, woven into its folklore. And though fans remained divided, some insisting Rasheeda had known more than she admitted, others defending her innocence, fiercely the one truth they agreed on was that she had risen from collapse into crown. And that image, Rasheeda walking into the future with her head high and her voice steady, remained etched in memory long after the receipts had yellowed and the hashtags had faded, a symbol not of scandal but of survival, not of betrayal but of rebirth. And in the end, the loudest story Atlanta had ever told became not about Kirk's dirty secrets but about Rasheeda's unbreakable spirit, a spirit that refused to collapse again, a spirit that turned gossip into gospel. And in the echo of that story, the city moved on, but her name remained, spoken with respect, spoken with pride, spoken as proof that even in the cruelest spotlight, a woman can choose herself and shine brighter than ever before. And now, as this chapter closes, as the receipts fade from headlines and the voices that once screamed on lives turn into whispers on type, the one truth that remains is that you, the viewers, the fans, the ones who have followed every twist and turn of this saga, are the heartbeat of the story, because without your voices none of this would have carried as far or hit as hard. And as you sit there replaying the collapse, the confrontation, the silence that turned into strength, I want you to ask yourself what loyalty means, what love means, and what truth really costs. Because in this tale, we saw a woman give everything: years, youth, devotion, only to have secrets weigh her down until she fell to her knees. And yet, when the world thought she was finished, she stood taller than ever. And that's the moment that matters. Not the scandal, not the betrayal, but the rise. And it's in that rise that I turn to you now. Because stories like this live on only when we share them, when we keep talking, when we keep the dialogue alive. So if you were shocked, if you were moved, if your emotions ran high watching Rasheeda's heartbreak and her rebirth, let your voice be heard in the comments right now. Tell us whose side you're on. Tell us if Kirk deserves forgiveness or if this chapter is finally closed for good. Tell us if K. Michelle did what needed to be done, or if she went too far. And most of all, tell us what you would have done if it were your family, your empire, your love put on trial in front of millions. Because your perspective shapes the legacy of this story. And while you're down there, make sure you hit that like button to show your support for Rasheeda's strength. Smash that subscribe button so you never miss the next twist, the next truth, the next explosion from Atlanta. And don't just stop there, share this video with your friends, with your group chats, with your socials. Because the more people who witness this saga, the louder the message becomes. And the message is simple: secrets cannot stay hidden, lies cannot build legacies, and no woman, no matter how loyal, should ever collapse without the chance to rise again. So if you felt that, if you believe in that, Then help us keep the conversation alive, because your comments, your shares, your voices are the fuel that makes this channel burn brighter. And remember, this is not the end. The cameras may turn off, but the fallout continues. So stay locked in, stay subscribed, because we'll be here uncovering every angle, every reaction, every whispered rumor that spills next. Because in Atlanta, the drama never dies, it only transforms, and you don't want to miss the next eruption. So let's close this together, the way it began, with your engagement driving the story forward. Because in the end, you are not just viewers, you are the community, you are the jury, and your verdict is what decides how this story will be remembered. So stand with Rasheeda if you believe she deserves freedom. Call out Kirk if you believe he deserves to answer for every hidden dollar and every broken vow. Debate, argue, support, cry, but whatever you do, don't stay silent, because silence lets secrets win, and we've seen what secrets cost. So join the movement, keep the dialogue alive, and we'll meet you in the comments where the story continues, where your voice becomes the next twist, and until the next chapter explodes, remember to like, subscribe, and share, because this isn't just a video, it's a community, and together we're writing the ending to a saga that Atlanta will never forget.